Hello and welcome to You Normal. In this ever-changing, beautiful, wonderful, sometimes crazy and unpredictable world, it is really all too common for people to ask, like, is this normal? Here together with my guest, we share our own personal journeys with redefining and discovering what our own normal is. And we share that journey and the tools with you so that perhaps you are able to discover your own normal in what it is that you are creating in your life. I am very excited and honored to welcome my guests today, the co-founders of Olay. At Olay, they build cultures and partnerships that are powerful, reflective, distinct, and delightful. So today I welcome Alex. Sorry, I'm like going blank. Alex Lay Alex O and Nikolay Borisov, co-founders of Olay. And I'm just like a little bit of like, oh my gosh, I have two people at one time, which is super exciting. And also, this is the final episode of You Normal for season 1. Like, I'm at the end of season 1, which is really exciting. Before I pause and allow Nikolay and Alex to introduce themselves and tell you more about this amazing organization and mission that they've created, I'm just going to share with you what they share on their website. And that is that they are a culture consultancy and social journaling. I can't talk today, you all. I don't know what's going on. A little excited. A journaling studio based in LA. And you explore the intersection of people development, design thinking, and social healing to guide people to live and work with greater personal passion and camaraderie. You explore different channels and possibilities for engagement and communication to co-create communities, platforms, and content that reflect the members and users that share it. And I love this piece of it that you share conversations, community gatherings, and tools for the art of connection. And your first exploration into this world is social journaling. So I wanted to share that with the community because it is so powerful and wonderful. But I would love for each of you maybe to share either how you came to this together or apart in your own journeys and what all of those beautiful, commingled, wonderful words mean to you and how you're showing up in the world today. So whoever would like to start first.
Are you looking at me, Alex? Okay. Well, first and foremost, thanks for having us, Robina. I don't think anyone's actually read out loud some of that stuff that we have on the website. So as I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. So thanks for sharing that. It was nice to hear, nice to have it reflected back. We are actually celebrating, we're coming up on 3 years. We just celebrated 3 years of working together.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got together pre-pandemic, summer of 2019. And the way that we had like cross journeys through different work things that we were doing. I joined an accelerator program that Alex was running at the time. And so we had been exposed to each other in that work context and then developed a friendship. But I think the thing that solidified this relationship and why it's so special and the timing is so interesting is we actually took a bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles for AIDS life cycle. And so for 7 days, we shared a tent and bicycled anywhere from 30 to 90 miles. And so I think after that, we were like, if we didn't kill each other after that, I think we can start a company together and do this. So That's a little bit about how we got together. Our really mission when we got together was just to really change the world of work. I think both of us had previous experiences that didn't really resonate with who we are, and really asked us to leave a huge part of who we are. And so by the time we got together, we were sick and tired of the different dynamics. And so we were like, we need to change the world of work. Let's do this. And so that's a little bit of the genesis of how we got together. I know I'm skipping over a lot of details. So Alex, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, echo everything that Nikolay's already shared. And for me, in hindsight, I just realizing that it was such an exploration and adventure in trust, not just learning to trust ourselves, but trusting what a working relationship could look like, trusting what a workplace could look like, trusting how to collaborate and communicate in new ways. And I think that's where kind of our journey and our company is such a reflection of how we built that trust with each other and ourselves. And so, referencing to social journaling, that's how we built our company. Like the initial conversations around building our business are always tough because you're bringing two people who may have different visions and perspectives about the best way to do that. And so, we just realized the best way that we communicated with each other was by journaling together. So, we would each grab our notebooks. We would share a question of like, what should our business name be? What should the colors be? What's at the heart of our work? And we would journal. And then we would come back, swap our journals. We would read what each other wrote. And it was just a powerful exercise to be like, oh, wow. Like I would have never viewed it this way. What Nikolay is sharing is really expanding my perspective and expanding the considerations that I should have in the decisions that we're making. And lo and behold, every client that we worked with, we unknowingly asked them to do this whole process. And so finally, when we were able to realize, oh my gosh, we're like a journaling company, we're asking everyone to journal, we were really just, full speed ahead. We were able to really identify that and then move forward and build a business around it.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't really thought about it like you said, but it took me back to what we'll go back in the day, and I would write letters to people. Like that was the standard form of communication. It would take some time and thought. I mean, there was the telephone as well, but there's this part of writing, and then even I think back to when my husband and I we were first kind of dating, and he was deployed, and you're like on what was it, AOL or whatever, right? We chatted the whole time through typing the words. And so it takes I don't know, it's like that vulnerability of just putting your words out there, but also the delay of allowing your thoughts to kind of marinate a little bit versus just blurting out the first thing that comes to mind. And I don't like, are you like, I would presume maybe that's what you're finding in your business with your clients and your community that you're growing.
Absolutely. I mean, a blank page can be really overwhelming. And a lot of times we'll present the prompt and they'll be like, oh, I don't know. Like, I'm not a writer, I'm not a journaler. But then you present them with this opportunity and time to like sit with their own thoughts. And initially, I don't know if you feel this either, Robina, in terms of writing a letter to someone too. You're like, ooh, I don't even know what the focus is going to be for this letter, but you just start writing. And with each sentence and each word, you finally discover, oh, this is what I wanted to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, personally, I last week I was sharing with my guest, and she shared with me Vision Quest, and that was the first place that I started showing up and writing every day. I had done a little before that. I was like, oh, I'll do a blog challenge, but I like didn't tell anybody, and it was just my own thing that I would, put something out there for nobody to read, in my opinion. But it really transformed the way that I don't know, I guess my own relationship with myself more than anything. Obviously, in my business and my communication and letters, but it was kind of like, oh, like I'm really getting to know myself by writing in this journal. And now I have like journals everywhere. I'm usually writing in 3 or 4 at the same time because it depends on what the theme is that I want to write on.
I could so relate with that. I go back on some of my journals and I'm like, who wrote that? What? Who was that? That was not me. I mean, like good and bad. Sometimes I'm like, oh, so much wisdom. I'm like, what headspace was I in to write something like that? But I think that's exactly right. What I love about the work that we do, because it's also like a philosophy, right? It's about getting present. It's about engaging in the present moment of what's going on. And then also through the practice of pausing, and then when you social journal, you do it with others, listening, like what Alex said, like expanding perspective. Like when you're listening to someone, you're not thinking about what you're going to say, you're not thinking about how you're going to respond, you're just listening just to take it in and just to be there for someone else and hold space. And then you don't need to have a good answer back. Your only job is to listen and that person to share. And then when you do it in a big group of people, you then begin to not just get your perspective expanded, but then you get like a collective understanding of like, what does this mean for us as a group? Like for Robina, Alex, and myself, what does connection mean for us three? Because if it was another group of three people, that would have a different definition. And so I think
Right.
that's what is so cool, is like your own experience and understanding and definition gets expanded, but then you're like, oh, I get it. This is how we experience connection right here in this moment. And it keeps bringing you back to the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes me back to, there's a question I was asked once, and it's like, are you interacting or are you connecting, right? And there's such a difference. Like you can interact with someone at Starbucks, but you can also connect with someone at Starbucks, right? Depending upon how, I guess, connected you are to yourself or present, how, whatever the definition may be for different people. And I think what you said is even the most important, or maybe more important component of it, is you don't have to have a response to what they're saying. To just sit there in silence can be very beautiful, because then you're not preparing a response and lost in your own thoughts. You're just listening to that other person fully. Right?
It's just so opposite of what we're taught. And
Yeah.
what's expected of us, especially at work, in the context of work, is like always have a solution, always have a response, always know what to say. And it just takes away. And I think to what you said about feeling, interacting versus connecting, it's a feeling. It's like a tangible feeling that you experience. And
Yeah.
so we're all about the pause, the awkward silence. In our workshop, we always tell people, like, we tell the leader that brings us in, there will be awkward pauses. We embrace the awkward pauses. It's so powerful because people process differently. I process differently. I will bring something up that was said 5 minutes ago because I'm like, oh, I finally got it. Okay, let me share what I got.
Yep. Yeah. I am so like you. And just to kind of share with people, I met Nikolay in the Inner MBA program that we did, a year or two ago now. I don't even remember. Like that time is just lost over the last couple of years. And so that's how we met, which is a very similar platform of transforming business, right? Finding a new way to do it. And I think where people are asking, is this normal, or can we change it and be creating more of a conscious leadership, conscious business, conscious world? Just to share that piece of it. So, but what you said, the part of like writing, yes, there are times where I just go, oh my gosh, did I write that? Like that wasn't me. But the awkward silence is really powerful. And I know that you have two areas that you work, right? You have businesses that you work with, your clients, and then there's this community that you can just show up in and people show up there. But that awkward silence can be, I find, very informative. I remember at my last like real job, I'll say, before I ventured out on my own business, I went into a conversation with the partner that I worked with. And I had told myself, I'm not going to say anything unless I'm actually asked a question. And it really changed the conversation, because then I wasn't feeling the silence, somebody else was. And then I didn't really have to talk as much as I thought that I needed to. So putting it out there for both of you, that as you work in the communities that you've created, and please share with people about the communities as well, like your Mondays and Wednesdays, what you're doing there, like the ideas behind it, but then also in those, like maybe examples of how you help your clients through those awkward, uncomfortable moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, beyond, what we share about ourselves, like at the core of it, there is a level where helping people and individuals to create systems of support. A lot of that on the individual level is like, how do you create that self-empathy? How do you create those boundaries? How do you create that practice of rest? And silences and pauses are part of that rest. like being able to like sit in that moment and process in your own way and kind of reflect like how you're feeling that moment in that pause is such a practice of support for oneself. However that may look like or be interpreted for yourself. And then with our work for companies too, it's working together with leaders, the C-suite, to really think about, is your company supportive of your employees, of the teams, of your customers, everyone that makes up that ecosystem that is your company? Do they have support systems and structures? And so at each level, we're trying to communicate the importance of that and how they all work together. So the systems of support and communication and connection at the company-wide level also help the individual to create it for themselves. Because a lot of time when we see the lack of pauses and the need to respond and be reactive almost instantaneously, it's because it was baked into the culture of that relationship and of that company. And so we can communicate and showcase and facilitate sessions that really embrace that awkwardness and embrace that pause. But if it's not really modeled and practiced by the leadership, then it's hard for individuals and team members and employees to really practice that for themselves as well. And Nikolay is a huge proponent. Like every client, every engagement that we work at, he's like, is the leadership modeling the engagement that they want to see? So it's really important that anything that we do really reflects that idea.
I think what you said, Alex, is maybe some people don't realize is, and I may not get it correct, but that the upper leadership, if you will, they don't necessarily have that support structure under them in the way that you're talking about, right? And so having that space to be vulnerable, to kind of find out what they're feeling, and to have a place that they can do that is really powerful, and it can shift leadership. But I have to imagine too, it's like I didn't even think about it, like with the advent of email, everything's so instantaneous these days that you're not like, you may not be creating that pause because it feels so hurried. And like you said, if leadership isn't driving that ship and reflecting it in the way that they are leading the company, all this training sounds great, but then, people start to get nervous and go, well, they're not doing it, so should I be doing it? So, but again, going back to what I have seen, at least in many companies, is that there's not that, I think, the support system for leadership to know how to do it because they were raised in a business where you didn't, right?
Or they're doing it and they're not being public about it. And that's, I think, the thing. Or they're doing it on their own, but they're not engaging with the initiatives or programs that are offered through the organization. And so it's like, yeah, that's good. Like, have set those things up, but I'm too busy because I need to do this, and I'll take care of myself when I need to. But I won't share like, hey, I actually need to go to see a doctor in the middle of the day, or I'm taking like a longer lunch, and like share that because that seems like inappropriate. But they might be doing it. And there's research that shows like the higher people go in terms of seniority, the more self-care that they do, the more sleep that they get, the more at the highest levels, but it's not public or shared. And I think that's where it's like that gap, that expectation, that visibility is like, well, they're working 24 hours a day. And it's like, well, sure, they might be connected 24 hours a day, but are they taking care of themselves? And how can we create programs or initiatives within the organizations that they also partake in as well?
Well, and one of the things that it said on your website is about creating that sustainable lifestyle for yourself, if you will, because if you're not creating sustainability for you, then like there's no sustainability in your relationships, in your community, or in your career, right?
Absolutely. And a big point too is like accessibility. Like when we do reach those higher levels of management, we are getting paid more. And so we do have access to certain forms of rest and care that maybe our employees don't. So it's not only about like the awareness and the publicity of like, yes, I need this and I know that this is a priority, and I'm modeling the practice of rest and the practice of care that I want my employees to experience, but it's also creating accessible channels for your employees, because a lot of times self-care can seem so inaccessible and so expensive. So that's a huge part of our work too, is how do we create accessible care?
Right. Well, and I read something that we actually have more free time now than we did just a few decades ago, not very long. So you would think that there would be time for this more self-care, right? Sometimes that self-care can just be a walk outside in the park. and or wherever. I mean, I know people live in the cities, but now with Zoom and ways to connect, you all are providing space for people to just show up and do a little bit of self-care in the form of meditation and, like you said, the social journaling, right? And I haven't been to your Wednesday midweek meditation, but I signed up for it coming up. So share on that piece. And I'm assuming that all of that came about because, like you're saying, not everybody has accessibility to those types of things. So how do we share that with the community as part of our mission? I mean, I'm assuming. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
To be honest, all of the things, not all, but a lot of the things that we've put on came from a personal need. And I think that's like the thing that Alex is talking about, like when we're modeling the behavior, it's like, okay, I need space to take a break in the middle of the day, not a long space, but just a 15-minute pause to breathe with other people and like have the accountability of doing it together. And that's actually how we started our morning journaling club that Alex started over 2.5 years ago. At the beginning of the pandemic, she was like, I need accountability. Let's journal every morning at 7:30 a.m. And I'm like, that is way too early. Absolutely not. But 2.5 years later, we've been doing it every single morning. And we have a morning journaling club where people have joined us from all over the US, all over the world, have like stopped by. And it's an accountability of starting the day with gratitude, starting the day with reflection, and setting the tone for the day. And so a lot of the programs that we started or that we're doing that are community focused are things that bring us joy, and that there was like a personal desire or need for it, that we were like, okay, how can we bring others on this journey? Because if we're feeling it, other people must be feeling it. And if this is a way that we're getting satisfied or we're fulfilling that need, let's do it with other people. Let's share that. Let's not just do it on our own.
Yeah. It makes such a difference because it is a form of meditation in a way, right? Mm-hmm. Showing up together on the paper versus on the mat, let's say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say another key component is really helping people to see that they are the wisest source of information for their own healing, for their own care. I think so often we are taught and socialized to look externally for certain answers about ourselves. And so through the meditation, through the breath work, through the journaling, through the community conversations, it's really about what is your own definition for this? Mm-hmm. What is your own practice for this? And it's really helping people to tap in to starting to listen to themselves, to begin trusting themselves and seeing themselves as an incredible source of experience that they can draw on to figure out, this is how I can practice care for myself. This is how I can deepen trust with myself and in turn with the relationships around me. So it's really advocating for the individual as well.
Okay, well, I think that's it right there. Like, mic drop. That's everything that we needed to cover because it is so true. Like, let those words soak in for a moment. Like, they're so powerful. And I know for me personally, that journey of like trusting myself, when I first, like, someone asked me, I'm like, you trust? Like, no, I don't trust myself. Have you seen like what I did with my life? Like, you know, like you said, like showing up in the job, and I think compartmentalizing who we are and kind of squeezing ourselves into this, I'll say I, not our, because you weren't with me, but where I was squeezing myself into this suit and this mold of what I thought that it looked like to be a CPA, a wife, a mother, or this, or that, you know, anything that I was doing, but it wasn't really honoring who I was because I had learned that it was like easier, not really easier, but I believed it to be easier to do something else. And it created the distrust with myself. And through the process of asking myself questions, reflecting on where this engagement, let's say in the workplace, was very filled with friction, and where I owned it and what that meant for me, and then to start, like you were saying, is feel, what am I feeling? Like, what is really my truth here? Or what do I think my truth is? What if I just step out on a limb and try that for once? What does that look like? But through doing that, it's what's transformed my relationship with other people. And I mean, I feel like at the end of, I mean, that's so much where it's at, like they say, self-love, right? Love yourself. And I feel like the rest of it comes a whole lot easier.
I want to expand on one thing that you said, Robina, in terms of like asking yourself questions, because we really believe like, let's make it easy on ourselves too. And so one of the ways we make it easy for as a company and for us individually is to create small sets of questions that we can ask ourselves. And if we say no, if we answer no to any one of these questions, then it's a no to the opportunity or no to the task or whatnot. So for example, the 3 questions that we ask ourselves if any opportunity comes up is first, are we excited about this? Like, am I feeling pulled to it or am I feeling pushed to it? Like, am I going to have to like pull within myself and be like, oh, okay, fine, I'll do it. The second one is there space for surprise? I think a lot of times we can go into a situation or a relationship or conversation with a lot of judgment. So this question is really about, are we open for curiosity? Like, are we open to anything coming up? Are we open to being surprised about the situation? And then the last and final question that we ask is, are we approaching this from a state of overflow? So is it kind of the idea of, is my glass half empty or is it half full? Like, do I have the capacity, the resources, the energy to be able to like give my all within this scenario? And so with those 3 questions, if we're yes, 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 then we're like, okay, let's jump in. But even if it's like a yes, yes, no, then we really sit down and we examine, why is that a no? And then ultimately it leads to a no to the opportunity. And it's really our way of being like sustainable, not only individually, but sustainable as a partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, and those 3 things are so powerful. They're really in alignment with the way that I approach things as well. Is I look at it from like soul, self, and wealth being like the financial resources, but more importantly, the energetic resources. Like, does this light me up? I like to say, does it spark joy? They have the SMART goals, and I have my spark goals, where it's like, I want to make it more like, if it doesn't spark joy, why the heck are you doing it in the first place? So, I mean, there's things that you have to do when you work somewhere, like, file your taxes. That's not necessarily a joy sparker. Speaking as someone who like worked in that world for a long time, but there are those things that you have to do as a piece of it. But the bigger things, like you're saying, the overflow, and isn't it Rumi who says like to give from your overflow, not from your well, right? I think that's it. So it really does transform. And I would imagine that as you're working with businesses in your community or even your own business, since you're modeling it isn't just those big things, the investment, the partnerships, maybe, are we going to work with this client? It can be as simple as, does that social media, are we interested in that? Or, if you're hiring an employee, it can seem like so simple, but carry throughout your entire organization.
Yeah. The other thing that coupled with that is that it just takes time. Like embracing that. Like, I'm such a like type A, let's go, keep it moving, busybody, can't sit still. Like, that's just my energy, right? And just things just take time, right? And repetition over time within like what we do creates embodiment. And so I'm like, I meditated for 10 minutes for 1 week. I'm great. Woo! Nothing's changed, right?
Was that 10 minutes cumulative over the whole week or like each day?
Right. I'm like, and then I'm done. But it's like, yeah, 2.5 years later, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm seeing the benefits of this. I'm seeing that it's changing my perspective on the way that I'm approaching everything, that it's okay to take a pause and breathe. Like, not just like conceptually as a to-do list to take a pause and breathe, but like my being needs a pause to breathe, to fully bring myself to the next thing that I'm doing. It's like we've asked ourselves these questions for years. And then now it's like, okay, got it. Like, you don't even need to at some point ask the question. You're like, no, there's something not here. There's something not right. But it takes time. Like, I think that's one of the things I want to share, like as a like a gem of encouragement, is just like, and some days it doesn't feel good and I don't want to do it. And it doesn't honestly feel like it's working. It just feels like, ugh, whatever. But I think having that repetition, but also having someone to do it with, like that community. Like for us, it was Alex and myself. You know, we had ourselves as accountability, and we would meet every day and talk every day. And even before we started the business, we would text each other gratitudes every morning and like why we were grateful for those things. And that just like set the tone of like, I actually want to do life with this person in a very intentional way. And we're going to share things about each other in a very intentional way. I think we did that, Alex. I don't even remember how long we did that, but for months before we even like talked about starting to work together. So it's these things take time. And I'm saying that to share it, but I'm also like reminding myself, like, Nikolay, listen, yeah, those other things that you're working on now, they just take time. Like, breathe into them, create some space into them. It takes time.
Well, and even, I don't know about you, but on that, like, think about the things that you're creating right now that weren't even a blip on the radar when you first started. And you're like, oh, let's go into business together. You're right. But then in the moment, there can be so much of that inner critic, if you will, judgment, whatever. It's not going fast enough about what you're creating. Like that it's all of us, it's just supposed to, it's kind of, a human doesn't come out walking and talking and taking care of itself. Yet we expect anything that we create in our business to be like flying off, the shelves, so to speak, from the get-go. So I think we lose sight of that a little bit. And I love what you were saying about that bike ride, because I've done some long, sports where you're in it for a long time. There's always that spot that you hit where you're riding next to the other person and they're like, oh, it's a great day. And you're like, they tell me it's a great day one more time. Right. So that's where that accountability comes in, and that support and community. And really what you've created is this really, it sounds like a good, strong habit muscle within your business that when things go off the rails, if you will, right, your chain goes off, that because you've developed that strong muscle from the beginning within your organization, that it's not, maybe, I don't know, this is a question. Is it not such a stretch then when things feel like they're not going the right way?
I think this is where I'm so grateful for like Nikolay and our partnership, because usually when one of us is just like off the track, the other one is on it and they're like, wait, where'd they go? And so we have that support and that anchor to remind us like, oh, this is why we're doing this. Mm-hmm. And so it's more than accountability, but it's really advocating for each other, because I do feel a lot of the times Nikolay advocates for me more than I can advocate for myself in a moment. And I think that has been one of the pillars of our friendship and this business partnership, is really making sure that we can stand with each other, even if, the chain comes off of our bike. And at least if it does, we're not stranded by ourselves. But if the case be, the other person can ride ahead, get help, and then come back, or they can sit there with me to kind of help me figure it out and put the chain back on the bike. But I think that's what we end each of our workshops. Nikolay says, don't do life alone, because it's really that like support system and that partnership and that community that really helps at least me to take that step forward and to continue walking forward.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, even in those moments. I have my own business. It's just me. I want to say just me, but it's not really. There's a whole community of people around me. But my own practice of doing breath work over the last year or whatever is that when that chain comes off, it helps me to stop and go back to what I do know, right? Like, Nikolay, you're talking about my 10 minutes of meditation. Like when those things go wrong, at least, like, well, I can just sit here for 10 minutes if I let myself and see what happens in the space of those 10 minutes, because inevitably there's going to be something that we're walking through alone, whether you're a 2-partner organization or you have 200. Well, that'd be a lot of people, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'd love to ask both of you, what are the things that help anchor you and bring you back? Like talking about the 10 minutes of meditation and breath work, talking about having a partner to work on things, but are there other tangible things in the moment that help you to find your way back to yourself and your work?
You want me to go first, Nikolay?
Yeah, go
Is that
ahead.
what
I'm
you think?
thinking.
Well, there's a few things that I have developed over time, just like you're saying, right? There's these things that evolve. The first is when I did my first vision quest for a few days, I wrote an emergency plan, which was basically a letter to myself. Like if everything goes wrong, I even wrote it like if you're reading this, something's gone really wrong, but that means it went right. I believe that whatever's happening is right in the moment. And so from a really, I think, a positive and healthy place, I wrote this letter to myself because, like you said, who knows me better than me, right? Like I know all my tricks when I'm like, no, I totally wasn't being snarky just then. So I wrote that letter to support me, and when I am in those moments I will go back and read it because it's like what. And I wrote to um so I randomly, when I was writing and walking, I developed this structure: write your sails, adjust your course, navigate to your true north, and keep your eye on the destination. And so my letter went through each of those bullet points for physically, how do I take care of my physically? How do I write my sails, adjust my course, and then spiritually, mentally, and financially, like walking through each of those and what it looks like, because it's different for all of them. And when I get in like maybe my headspace and I'm swirling down the drain, I won't go outside and walk, which is always where the answers show up. And then beyond that, I have a mantra that I created. I go back to my own mission, like why I started my business in the first place, my own beliefs. And then when all else fails, if that's not working, and usually it is, I do have an accountability partner that I will reach out to. And she's always, like you were saying, she's always that bright sunshine when I'm feeling down. And not that it's going to pull me out of that space, but she's going to say something that's going to remind me of something that I've shared with her before. And I'm like, okay, I can move forward with this. So that's kind of a long answer for mine. It's many, but I think you have to have quite a few because, like I said, I know all the tricks.
Yeah, I agree. Like that's so challenging because I think it depends on the day. Like some days I need a good scream. Like other days I need a good workout, like some hot yoga or like a tough strength training workout where I'm just like depleted after it physically. Other days I just need like a good cry with some like really good music. I think it really depends on what the situation calls for. But I think even having that ability to take a moment and just be like, what do I need? Like even on Saturday, I was like feeling this. It's like I was just feeling so irritated and just like annoyed with everyone and everything.
Oh,
For
welcome
no,
to Mercury retrograde.
and no, for no good reason. Like I got enough sleep. Like no one, like I did not have a negative experience, but I just like it makes your skin crawl. Like that's how I felt around everyone and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I have to go work out. I went and did like a really hard workout. I took a bath. I like disconnected. But I think it depends. It depends on, the day and what's going on around me. I do know that I need some solitude time in order to get back to myself. But then I also need, like, I'm such a verbal processor, and Alex knows this. Like, I'm just like, Alex, let me just like vomit words on you. I just need to get this out. And she's so kind and generous to listen and ask questions. But I know that I need both of those. It's like I need to recalibrate in solitude, and then I need to be like, okay, how does this sound or fit?
Yeah. Well, I think that's important because it's kind of, like a pond that has like stagnant water. It builds up the film on top, right? So we have like these thoughts that we just need to purge and get rid of so that we can get down to the good stuff that's under the surface. And to have someone that we could do that with is really important. So,
And
what about you,
shout out-
Alex?
Oh, go ahead, Nikolay. I think you were going to add one little thing in there.
I was just going to shout out to Tiffany what she wrote because it's so true. And then you become hard on yourself and you're like self-deprecating and you're like, oh, I'm better than this. Why did I do this? I've been working to be better. Yeah. So it just becomes like a shame spiral. So yes, Tiffany.
Yeah. As for me, my inner landscape is just really vibrant. and really my own place of solitude at times. So in the moment, sometimes I'll just like close my eyes and take a deep breath, really embracing that inhale to be like a whirlwind inside my body to uproot different things. And the first question I ask myself is this even mine? Or have I absorbed someone else's emotion or their thought or their projection? And a lot of times I'm like, oh, yeah, this isn't mine. I'm able to shed it almost immediately. And I recognize like in the past, I didn't necessarily do that. And I would hold on to it forever because I'm one of those people that can't let go of something until I figure out why it bothers me so much.
Mm-hmm.
So now I feel like this strategy of just like taking deep breaths. A lot of times I only need anywhere between like 1 to 5 to really uproot and then ask that question of like, is this even mine? Really helps me to be like, oh, yep, that wasn't mine. So it's out now. Like I've exhaled it out. And so that's my most like immediate tool that I use to help remind me of myself.
Well, and I think to Nikolay's point, even, and I've been feeling it too, by the way. I normally, I feel like, normally when Mercury retrograde comes around, I'm doing okay. But this one I'm definitely feeling. And I'm like, okay, so if everyone's annoying me, who am I annoying? Maybe I should just go put myself in timeout. Because someone said, like if someone put you in therapy, then you probably put them in therapy, is what I heard once. So I always try to like kind of keep it real. It's not all about Robina, sadly. I don't know.
I
You're
love
in the
that
awful
so
world.
much.
And sometimes you're annoying yourself.
Right? Yeah. I just like, I'm going to go put myself in a room. Like now painting is a great way for me. Like you're saying, like you said, that vibrant landscape, I think is what you said, that I love that because we all have a vibrant landscape. And it's just if we show up in a different way and we find that outlet that really lights us up, like there's so much beauty that can be created in the world from that. And even, I don't know, I show up at the canvas even when I'm mad and angry, and still something will come from it if I just, kind of, show up in that space. And Alex, you said something too about the breath. That is another one I feel like has been a game changer for me, is doing breath work and really training my nervous system, like retraining it of how to respond in those moments. And in my breath work, there's the saying that we do at the beginning because we tap beforehand. And the line that I always repeat when I'm stressed out, when something is painful in my body, and like I just want to stop, is I'll just say like, my breath is pure and full of wisdom. My breath will always keep me safe. And as I'm saying that, I'm breathing instead of holding my breath. And then it takes me back to when I am in breath work and that safe environment that has been created, and that environment that I've made for myself, where then in that situation, say for example, last night, I woke up at 12:30 last night thinking about something that my son needed to do. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get out of bed at 12:30 and stress over this, or can I just lay here and just like remind myself like that my breath is pure and full of wisdom, and it just relaxes me into that moment. And that I feel like I can show up as, I don't want to say a better version, I think just more and more loving version of me, versus driven by, like we were saying, that where there's no pause, then it's just go, 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 like a little scurry car that you just wound up and it takes off in any direction.
And you mentioned such an important practice, I think, with breathing, to put a mantra to your inhales and a mantra to your exhales really helps to be present and also like prioritize what is it that you're inviting into your body, and then what is it that you're being like, you stayed a long time, but you need to leave now.
Yeah. Well, and the last couple of years, I feel like that's a whole exercise in that. And by the way, I have teenagers now, so that's a whole exercise in my teenage years. But it's like, okay, you've been here for a while. I say, there's a saying I came up with, which is, there's no shame in living a life of survival, but there comes a time when it is a choice. And so it's asking myself, where am I doing this from, this survival mechanism that I created? And if I take a step back and know that I have other tools that I can operate from? Like, where am I going to choose a different path? And I really feel like that's been happening for a lot of people the last few years. And I think turning back to your business, and your business sounds so formal, but this beautiful mission that you've co-created together in supporting people, communities, relationships, businesses from the inside out, so timely and for people. And I'm curious how, like, maybe you've seen businesses even evolving over the last few years. Like, you're talking about those leaders who they're not mirroring it, or they don't show that their laundry's piled up like a mile high at home, and their kids are, giving them a hard time, and they have a doctor appointment. Now we see it more with Zoom. We're like in people's homes, right? Like, we're in each other's homes right now. So I'm curious if that has changed at all, as this evolution of what has been the last few years.
And the other thing for me that I've realized doing this work is that there's clearly people who get it, and then there's just people who don't. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like one of the conversations that we've had internally between each other is like, are we going to try to convince people and like try to be like, you should do this. This is really good. Like, not only is it like really good for you as like a human and as a leader, it's also really good for your company. And we like come in trying to like convince and like teach, even like get them to like win them over to this different way of being. And then it just takes so much effort and energy and like life force. And then we work with organizations or leaders, and they're just like, yeah, I get it. Can we just do it? Like, let's just get started. Like, yeah, I don't need any of that talk. I don't need any of that. And I think that's the thing that's been really clear for me is that, go where it's received, and like where people want to do the work. They want to take that step. They're willing to, take the risk of bringing something like this into the organization. They've seen the impacts and values, and we see that the actual like adoption and integration of this kind of work is like through the roof. Like, people are way more open-minded and open-hearted and willing to try it. And then they're coming back and they're like, I tried it and this didn't work, or this worked, but then I tried this thing. And it's just, I think that's one of the things that has been really clear for me, because it's some people, I think they want to, or they have like the desire to do it, but they're not ready.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And we're not for everybody. I think that's like one of the hard things when you're first starting out. You want to be for everybody because it's business and you're excited and you like want to change the world. But that's one of the lessons that I'm learning. Yeah. Alex, I don't know if there's one that stands out to you.
Yeah, tied into what you said, Nikolay, in terms of going where individuals are ready and places are ready. I think we're stepping further into just like knowing that people who are doing this work, those people in those communities also need support. And so and more, we're finding ourselves to be a space and a community for people who are facilitators, for people who are advocates and activists in their own way, and knowing that, yes, they're teaching this, but at the same time, they need to practice it. And so just building the community and the voice around that, and just like witnessing people to find that rest and care as they're doing this work has been incredible. And then secondly, I think like a huge internal learning for us is to trust our pace. I think initially we got, whenever you start a business, you get this checklist and you feel like you have to do all of these things to get your business off the ground. And there are times when we do sprint and do like feel like we have that pressure behind us. But I think more than anything, the lesson of like trust your pace has really been loud and clear. And that opportunities that we may not be ready to say yes to right now, but we really want, if they're really right for us, they'll still be there a year from now. Mm-hmm. And so it's really stepping into like trusting the timing of our own work.
I love that you said that. So I haven't put it out there yet, but I created this word called spiritical instead of a sabbatical. I'm going on a spiritical. I don't even know if that sounds right, this summer. And I decided I'm taking the whole summer off. And, it's like part of me is like, Robina, what are you doing? Like, you're just kind of building your business and like getting things moving. And I just said, no, I'm taking the summer off for me, for my family, for whatever is like you were saying, we need space for surprise, right? And I'm like, I just need to create some space for a surprise. And there's things that I love to do in my business. So how can I do that in a way that lights me up even more? And maybe nothing will come from any of it other than I just have the summer off. But giving myself the permission, understanding the pace at which I want to move, not what the world is going to move, but also knowing like I can't get on social because then I'll be looking at what, one of my friends is doing and comparing to her. But if I do, I know that what I'm doing is different, and I'm going to honor that and create it. So it is really important. And I really do believe what you're saying too. I have seen it, especially because I'm working in this space and connected to so many people, that it is the facilitators often that need what it is that they're doing in the world. Like I have someone I work with because I'm my worst client sometimes. And so to have another person out there supporting me and helping me to ask the questions, helping me to pause and build out that space, it is really needed as well, because then we can go in and create a more powerful impact with people. And Nikolay, to what you're saying, I have seen that too. There's just people that don't get it. They don't want it. Like they'll ask me what I am, and I'll say, "Oh, I'm a soul self wealth doula," and they just sit there and they look at me, and there's that awkward silence. And so I get creative sometimes in what I say, but it's like my kids. I could force them to eat veggies and they're not going to want to, and I could leave a whole drawer full of veggies, or I could find people who want some veggies, right? So it's like it's knowing who your ideal client, if you will, is. Like, where is that synergistic experience going to be created? And going back to what we started with is the trust. Just trusting that what it is that you're creating and offering to the world is going to be received, and that like those people are going to find you when you open yourself up to that, versus taking whoever you need. And I would say the business world's taught us that, right? Like, oh, they're not really in alignment, but we'll take them, right? We always used to do that in the CPA world. And now you really get to decide, no, like these are the people that we're going to work with. And there's nothing wrong with the other people. They'll get there if they're meant to in their own time, and they'll find the people that they need, and eventually they'll show up and work with me if that's where they're supposed to be. So I applaud you both for that and what you're creating. And just taking a look at the time, I'm gonna, like, the people who are out there, if you have any questions, by the way, but as we're ending, don't be afraid to drop them in. I've been watching the comments roll by. But just as we're closing, I want to say thank you to both of you. I feel like we could talk all day about this and what it is that you're creating. But I would love for you to share with everybody, your invitations to show up in your community, what that looks like. If there's business owners, how they might be able to work with you, or if anyone's just listening and like, I want to start social journaling. I want to show up in this space. I really love what they're saying. How do they do that?
So we know that there's a difference between like hearing it and then experiencing it. So we would like to invite everyone to come experience it with us. We host a bunch of free community events, from ones that last once a month to ones that we host every single morning, the Morning Journaling Club, as well as some new community workshops that we're going to be rolling out in the next several months. But if you're already excited and you're like, yes, I want to do something a little bit more in depth, like reach out to us and let's figure out a way to work together, whether that's collaborating on something, or for us to come to your company, or for us, like every now and then, Nikolay and I also coach individuals and partners to create deeper connections with themselves or with each other. So we love different ways of working, but that the core of the work is really this space for discovery and exploration. So if that's something you want to do, we'd love to connect.
Excellent.
And we love to journal. come journal with us. Like one-on-one, like we journal in groups, but we also like journal one-on-one. So like we would love to grab some time and journal with you. Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening and maybe not watching this, the Nikolay and Alex's website and their company is Olay, right? Olay. But it's OOH-LAY.com. So go and check them out. And I believe it's over kind of on the right. I message like this. It's over on the right side where you can find the connection point to some of the events and sign up as well, right? On the right border. Is that correct? Just for those of you that are listening, if you land on their page. And I'm excited. Like I said, I'm going to be showing up at your midweek meditation. I've done the Monday, the last Monday of the month, right? So that's coming up here really soon. And again, if anyone's interested in working with Nikolay or Alex or talking to them or collaborating, or you just want to absorb in more of what it is that they're creating, go check them out, sign up for their newsletter, follow them on social, wherever they may be on social. And if you have any questions, I'm guessing they can reach you through your website. Yes.
Yeah. So we have a contact page on our website, so you can send us a message there. You can find us both on LinkedIn, or if your jam is email, our email is hello@oh-lay.com.
Excellent. That makes it so easy. Well, again, thank you to both of you. Thank you to the people who were listening, interacting in your comments. We were enjoying them. And to anybody else, wherever you are when you watch this, hopefully this gives you something new to think about and create in and discover what is your own normal, because whatever is right for you is right for you. And it doesn't matter what works for anybody else, as long as it lights up your soul, it sparks joy, and it feels like it's bringing you into alignment with your soul, yourself, and your wealth, then you are going in the right direction. So thank you to all of you. Until we meet again.